It's been yet another exciting day here in Biel, Switzerland, following the action of the 57th International Biel Chess Festival. Today was round 4 of the classical tournament of the triathlon in both Masters and Challenger sections. We have selected the game of the round, and that is Vincent Keimer against Pragananda, because it was full with action and drama. So to start with, Winston played e4, which is very unusual move by the German #1 player, because Winston himself is a very obvious d4 and c4 player. So in the post-game interview, he said that he basically played e4 at the first move, basically for the first time in his life. After c5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5 is the Sicilian Rossolimo. So here Prague was looking for a fight. He played g6, and now, after the short castle, bishop g7, bishop takes on c6 is one of the common ideas in the Sicilian Rossolimo. Black has a number of choices how to respond, either b takes on c6, going for a more complex battle, or d takes on c6 is slightly more positional. d3 was played, knight f6, and here the tricky move, rook e1, hinting at the idea at some point to play e5. Black also would love to play e5 at the right moment and put the knight on h5. However, it's easier said than done. Here, after the short castle, h3 was played by Keimer. He said he was not really afraid of the bishop g4 and takes on f3 idea. Otherwise, why did Black double his pawns? For no good reason. So two bishops is his main reason why he went for this line. And after knight e8, since Black is threatened to play e5 to fight for the space advantage, here Winston played e5. The game continued with b6, a4. Keimer was not particularly sure about this move. To include, a5 was played, bishop f4, and now White's idea is to play queen c1, maybe trade the dogs with bishops on h6, while the queenside knight is ready to enter the game with knight a3, knight c4, trying to exploit the weakness on b6. The game continued with knight c7, queen c1, and probably the first inaccuracy from the Indian here. So he played f6. It might have been the better choice to start with knight e6 to identify where White wants to position his bishop. For example, White plays bishop h6. Here in some lines, Black can play moves like knight e4, leading to one type of position, or after the bishop trade on h6, f6, and then Black is not having the terrible bishop on g7, what happened in the game. Now instead here, Indian played f6. And after knight a3, g5, this was probably slightly too much. So here Black was trying to complicate the matters with the eventual g4 threat, then at some point play f5, but White would not include e takes on f6 to open up the bishops here in Black's position. The game continued with knight c4, hitting the pawn on b6, knight e5 made perfect sense, queen e2, rook a7, and about here, Keimer had a very interesting opportunity instead of queen e2 play e6, which was suggested by the engine. But in the post-game interview, Keimer said he was not sure about what happens with queen e8, queen g6, and massive complications. Let's just show you some of the lines. d4, bishop h6, d takes, b takes, queen e3, f5. So the game is a complete mess on the board, although the engine still prefers White very much so. So after queen e2, the game continued with bishop f5, which marks as a missed opportunity. Maybe g4 was slightly better to continue with the original plan. Now the point is, after h takes, knight h4, Black could play f5, and now here Keimer said that after knight g6, there was an opportunity for Black to play f4, knight f8, queen takes on f8, and a very complex position. Now instead here, after queen e2, Black decided to play bishop f5, d4, Keimer felt it's right moment to counterstrike in the center, and he was very much in control of the game. Black played rook d7, rook d1, h4, bishop h2, and knight b4. And about here, Keimer said that he was pretty sure that he's winning here in this position, but could not really work out the details. So he decided to play e6. Rook takes on d4. Pragananda was pretty happy to complicate the game. Now here, according to an engine, knight e3 was the best response, with the idea to meet bishop takes on e6, c3, rook takes on d1, and maybe knight takes on d1. There's a couple of good continuations for White, giving White a large advantage. This move was missed by Keimer. So instead of this, here Keimer was pretty happy to take the exchange with knight takes on d4, c takes on d4, and here knight d6, double exclamation move. But actually about this move, the German was not particularly happy. So he was considering moves like c3, leading to very concrete lines. Knight c2, the rook on e1 is under attack, followed by knight e3, knight e3, f takes on e3, and white still retains the advantage, but black is not yet lost. So knight a6 was a cute move. Black can never take on d6, not at least immediately, because e7 is yet another fork in the position. Also, the bishop on g6 is hit, and rook takes on d4 is a threat. So Praggnanandhaa responded with bishop g6, and here this was the critical moment of the game. Apparently, rook takes on d4 jumps into a fork of knight c2, and it was very difficult for white to work out the only move which would give white the advantage. This was rook d2, with the idea that after knight c2, rook c1, d3, white still keeps the advantage with rook d3, queen d3, and queen e4. Now the point is, black can still not take on d6. There's e7 threat, and the knight is heading to f5. Now instead, Keimer played queen c4, which sort of wastes all the opportunities that he had. And here, had Pragg played f5, this would have been a 3-result game. Black is very active. There's a lot of threats. The knight on d6 is hanging. Also, f4 is a threat to shut off white bishop on h2. But both of the players already were approaching a very serious time scramble. And to remind you, the viewers, there was no increment. Knight c2 was Pragg's chosen continuation. Rook c2, c5. Rook takes on c2, takes, e takes on d6. Now, after the complications, this is the position where black has 2 extra pawns, but the white pawn on e6 is too strong, so the position is about level. Rook e was played by the German, and here Pragg started to make mistakes. He should have continued with rook e8, with the idea not to block with a queen pawn. Now, here Winston intended to continue with something like f4. However, g takes, bishop f4, d5. Black simply wants to play c4, d3, so the position would remain level. Now, instead of this, here black played queen e7, followed by queen b3. Now, these pawns are pretty static. The pawn on e6 is pretty strong. And after rook d8, queen d5, as Vincent later confessed in the post-game interview, the big idea was bishop takes on d6, sacrifice the queen, and push for the pawn. So black here played d3. Now here, this was apparently a mistake, and f5 was still working, with the idea that after queen takes on f5, black can play c4, queen d5, and c3. And after the tactics at white's disposal no longer were working, because of bishop d6, rook d6, queen takes on d6, you can always play e7, queen e7, rook e7, d3, and this game from afar is very difficult to evaluate. Black wins back the pawn on b2. There's also c4 threat, so it didn't happen. Now, instead of this, what happened is that instead of f5, here Pragg played d3. He tried to push forward the d pawn, and after queen d3, played d5, stopping this bishop takes on d6 idea. Here, Winston played b3, still a good move, followed by d4, f4, and now black made a final mistake. He played f5. After f5, his position started to crumble. He could have continued with something else like king h8 and not rush to define the position. After f5, f takes on g5, white's position already was technically winning. But of course, the players were in a very serious time scramble, about 2 minutes each. Rook e8, bishop takes on b6, bishop f8, threatening to play bishop d6, queen f4, and try to checkmate white. That's why the German played bishop c7, stopping this move, but retaining a large advantage. And here, the final blunder from the young Indian, rook e7, trying to block the pawn, probably expecting only bishop d6, with the idea to play rook g7, threaten a mate on g2. As you can see, bishop on d6 now is under attack. But actually what he missed is another move, bishop d8, and white just simply collects the extra exchange. Everything was pretty easy after that. White simply collected the exchange, got the game to the next time control, and the rest was pretty easy. White was trying to crash through. Pragg at some moment tried to push for d pawn to avoid the queen trade. Now Keimer went back, collected the pawn. Here you go, the bishop is gone. And in the end, black's counterplay with the d pawn was simply not enough, because queen e1 is stopped by queen g1, and black had to resign. Very important victory for Keimer, heartbreaking loss for Praggnanandhaa, who is clearly not in shape in this tournament. Now let's check out the current standings after round 4 in the classical tournament. Here we see there's been a change in the overall rankings in both tournaments since Lim Le defeated Sam Shankland. with the black color and now is the new leader of the tournament with 16 points. Abhimanyu Mishra played a solid draw against Ike Matriosyan. He is now at the second place. Matriosyan still within the striking distance with 13 points. In the meantime, in the Challengers tournament, Salem Saleh is the new leader by overtaking the previous leader Vaishali, who played a very exciting draw against Mark Andrea Maurizi, while Salem Saleh played a very nice attacking game versus Igor Samonenkov. The action will continue tomorrow as usual, 2 p.m. Central European Summer Time. Come check it out live. Enjoy this and have a great evening.